Hello everyone, welcome to Of God in Mind. Got some science news for you today. So a new drug, or rather an old drug that was in use about 100 years ago, has shown some promising results in a US study for treating autism. So the researchers gave a real small sample group of 10 young boys aged between 6 and 14 either a single dose of this drug or a placebo. So something that they're meant to think is the drug but isn't actually the drug, if you haven't been around science tests before. Essentially it does nothing, a sugar pill. So in these results, those who were given the drug suramine showed rather remarkable improvement in their symptoms of autism. Some who hadn't even been able to speak before were even able to put together their first sentences. Now, this is the theory on how this works is it's running off the idea that autism is actually caused by a sort of cellular danger response where your cells, when they're injured or under a lot of stress and threat of injury, they sort of freak out. They have this special mode where they sort of try to mitigate that. But in autism, the theory goes that the cells are stuck in this mode, and that prevents a whole bunch of things, a whole bunch of links between various parts of the body and getting energy from the digestive system, stuff like that, which results in the sort of symptoms of autism that we know. Now, this drug suramine is known to be a drug that sort of interferes with that stress sort of response. It blocks some of the chemicals and the responses that the cells send out to each other to keep themselves in that mode. And by removing that, it's thought that it can sort of release the body from these and allow a more normal development to start happening here. Now, it's worth noting that the results in this study, well, one, they were very short-lived. As soon as the drug sort of started working out, everything went back to how it was before with the children. And also, this is, as far as medical studies go, a very tiny study. 10 people, all boys, is not a very big study, especially since only 5 of them were actually given the drug to test to make sure there was the drug affecting them, not something else. So still a long way to go here, but very promising results. And if we can, to help with this theory and to help confirm this theory, is a pretty big step in understanding what causes autism and how we can treat it. Next news is a study has discovered that CRISPR, if you've ever heard of it, CRISPR, gene editing, which has sort of been a bit of a wonder child in the scientific community lately, due to its ability to very easily and cleanly cut in and modify genetic code, something which has been very difficult to do before, prone to hitting the wrong bit or not killing the cells, stuff like that with the various methods. CRISPR was thought of to be the sort of wonder child to prevent all that, but this group did a long they studied the whole strand of DNA that had been edited by CRISPR. Previously, people had just sort of looked at the target area and its surroundings to make sure that everything was going okay there. But this group has done the much more time-consuming and expensive process of looking at the whole cell and found that these CRISPR modifications aren't as clean as we thought they were. They've actually affected a lot of other places along the DNA, random places, stuff in sort of the ends of the DNA, the sort of junk that's supposed to be there. And overall, it caused a lot of unintentional changes to the genetic code, which is definitely not something you want when you're seeking to edit the code for things such as treating genetic diseases or so forth, especially since those random mutations are often the cause of those very diseases. So this might be a promising new technology, but we still have a long way to go in refining it and discovering its side effects and so forth. So we've got a long way there. And that's kind of my view on genetic modification anyway. People are a bit too eager to start on people already, I think, when we know so little about what it even does. Right, moving on. China has just brought the world's largest solar plant online, or largest floating solar power plant, i.e. a massive amount of solar panels floating in this case, a kind of lake. So there is it's a 40 milliwatt plant. It doesn't actually give the specs for how big it is, unfortunately, but biggest of its kind in the world. And it's floating in what was once a coal mine in China. The mine went out of use and eventually flooded, and because it was a mine, there's so much minerals in the water that the water is essentially useless. So they decided, well, let's make use of this and let's put a floating power plant in here. Because solar plants, having them floating in water is rather advantageous. It gives sort of automatic, well, one, solar plants take up a lot of space, a whole bunch of water that is unable to be used for agriculture and various things like that is a good way to mitigate that. You're not using space that could be used for something else. And two, having the solar plant actually in the water helps with its operation, because it helps with cooling and so forth, keeping the elements cool, which keeps the arrays, the sort of banks of mirrors and so forth, running for longer. So China's doing a lot of really cool stuff with renewable energy. They've really taken a big step in doing that, shut down a whole bunch of plans for new coal plants and stuff and replaced it with a whole bunch of cool renewable sites like this. And now in some archaeology news, a study from a team of scientists from Italy have discovered, when studying two groups of people essentially, living in the Danube basin area near the Danube River, which is in Romania, this particular basin. They've discovered that the two groups of people here, one which lived by farming, which had come over from Turkey way, over in the Middle East in Anatolia, and those who had been in Europe for a bit longer and lived by hunting and gathering, found that these two groups actually had a fair bit of contact with each other and would often, or they produced children together, at least, as much as we know. How much, the study hasn't shown how interlinked they were, but producing children together, and there's even evidence that the diet was, that both sides were sharing in terms of food with each other. The hunter-gatherers had grains, cereals and so forth in their diet that you wouldn't normally expect, and likewise the farmers had things such as fish and shellfish that likely come from the hunter-gatherers. So whether these two rather culturally different populations would live together in some sort of arrangement, or whether there was just a whole bunch of trade and even intermarriage between them, we don't know. But either way, it's a lot more contact and a lot more peaceable interaction than we previously thought happened with these sort of very primitive communities. Anyway, that's everything for this week. See you all next time.